I'm always deliriously happy when the technology actually works, but up until that point, my stress levels start going up. But anyway, it was someone else's responsibility tonight. So, okay, well, I want to just very quickly introduce you to the little pig up here. This is you may have seen this, you can get this in little sort of coasters and things like that. The pig of happiness, and he is so happy. May his joyful smile remind you how much there is to be happy about. This is an Edward Monckton cartoon. Now that may appeal to you, or you may be ready to say to the person next to you, please pass the sick bag. So, whichever, it doesn't really matter, but we may come back to the pig later on. Okay, well let's talk about, briefly, what we're going to talk about tonight. So, I'm first of all going to say a little bit about defining happiness, and I'm going to put a definition up on the screen, which I just made up a few days ago, and I'd be quite happy for you to tear it to shreds or just say, no, that's not what happiness means to me. You make them up. But I don't think we're going to have time to go around everyone and find out your individual definition of happiness, but we could throw a few ideas around. What do we mean by the science of happiness? If you're not familiar with that, I will say a little bit about that. What is there to be sceptical about with the whole subject of happiness and the science of happiness? So we'll explore that a little bit. We're going to go into quite a bit more depth about the impact of personality on happiness, and we may find out what personalities we've got in the pub tonight. We're going to talk about brain structure and chemistry. I am not a brain scientist, but I've picked up a little bit of knowledge about this, which is useful in understanding the subject of happiness. And we're going to explore some other factors, and then we're going to look at... I've just picked out 7 happiness practices, which I think you may be able to pick some of them, and hopefully go away this evening with 1 or 2 that you might want to try. I'm not suggesting that you would want to try all of them, and 7 is just a selection of the best that I've found so far. Okay, well, what exactly is happiness? Some of you may be fans of Charles Schulz and Peanuts cartoons. Again, this may appeal to you, or you may find it sickening, but it's up to you. I don't mind which reaction you have. But Charlie Brown said, incidentally, what is happiness? And I think that's Linus, if I've got the characters right, on the right, saying, happiness is a sad song. Does anyone feel that? Do you sort of agree with that? Maybe some people do. No. The extroverts don't think that at all. Okay. Well, never mind. Let's put up my definition of happiness. Now, this is just something I've made up. I haven't read it in the book. Okay, so it goes like this. This is a day-to-day credit balance of positive emotions, mild to euphoric, and a reasonable degree of freedom from negative emotions, which could be mild to severe. So, do you agree? I'm getting some nods. Anyone want to challenge this? Bye.
Well, positive emotions is just restating the same word, isn't it?
So you're saying this is just a kind of circular definition? Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is circular. But that is what happiness is, I think, positive emotions. But that's it. That's interesting. Thank you. Undermining my talk already. That's fine. It's fine. I don't mind how sceptical or undermining you are. That's fine. Any other thoughts on that? Is that okay? Is it? Yes.
Only so far as some people are only happy when they're miserable. Yeah.
Oh, that's a bit. That's interesting, isn't it? I've got a book recommendation right at the end, which I'll just give you a little. I'll tell you now what that book is. It's Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. I don't know if you've ever seen that book. It's really good. If you enjoy wallowing in misery, then yeah, maybe that book is for you. Okay, well let's leave that as a kind of working definition, and we can come back to it if you want to. Okay. This is Daniel Nettle, who is Professor of Behavioural Science at Newcastle University. And he said something about happiness which is quite interesting. It would be interesting to know whether you agree or not. The best therapy of all is the realisation that total happiness is not attainable. This life is imperfect, and total bliss is not part of its design. Well, do you agree with Daniel Nettle? You get quite a lot of nods. Yeah? Okay. Well, I think it's a bit pessimistic. Maybe we can train ourselves to experience bliss a lot of the time. And that's just a suggestion I'm going to make this evening. And we'll talk a bit about that later on, how I might be able to back up that idea. Okay, let's move on. What do we mean by the science of happiness? Well, basically it means that there are loads of psychologists who call themselves, I guess, happiness scientists or positive psychologists, and they write academic journals about this now. So there is a journal of happiness studies. What's it say? An interdisciplinary forum on subjective well-being. One of the editors there is Ed Diner. He's written a book with his son, which is a very good book. Okay, so it's being studied academically into happiness and well-being. It's also about neuroscience. It's also about genetics, and we're going to talk a little bit about personality factors and how your personality, to a large extent, is inherited, and the impact that has on your happiness. And science of happiness is also about what factors affect happiness and what, if anything, we can do to increase our happiness. And I mentioned positive psychology, so this is a branch of psychology. This is quite a recent branch of psychology. It's nothing to do really with the power of positive thinking. Positive psychology is a branch of psychology which really only came into being, I think it's dated to 1998, and the seminal figure there is Martin Seligman, who has written a number of books on this subject. So positive psychology is really about happiness and the academic study of it. Okay, you may have seen this in the blurb. Does anyone agree with Freud here? The best that can be hoped for is the transformation of hysterical misery into common unhappiness. I'm not getting any nods here.
Wasn't hysteria one of Freud's main occupations? That he a lot of work on hysterical people.
Yeah, I guess this is a reflection of his client base, isn't it? Okay, well let's not take him too seriously. Let's move on from here. What is there to be sceptical about then? As this is Skeptics in the pub, I think we need to keep scepticism in our minds at all times. So, well, I've put a little book up there. The 7 Secrets of Happiness by Charles Brand. Well, what I'm suggesting that we should be sceptical about is popular books that offer the 7 Secrets of Happiness. You'll remember that I'm offering 7 happiness practices at the end of this talk, so you can be sceptical about that as well if you like. But happiness is more complicated than the secrets of happiness, and this is what makes it interesting. I have to say though that I have read Giles Brandreth's book on. Do you know Giles Brandreth? Is that guy? There's a bit of a lovey, isn't he? A sort of lovey personality on radio and television. I must admit, his book, The 7 Secrets of Happiness, it's an easy read and it's not bad actually. it's not bad. So if you read it, there's nothing wrong with reading it. But it's not science. I mean, it's not written by an academic psychologist. Let's be sceptical about the belief that we are no happier than our much poorer ancestors. Now, there's an organisation called Action for Happiness that you may have heard of, set up by Lord Richard Layard, who wrote a book on happiness, and the Dalai Lama is one of the patrons of that organisation. I'm not going to knock that at all, but I just kind of feel that there may be a bit of an anti-materialism agenda creeping into some of this, and you get this idea, this belief that over the last 50 years or say 100 years, we've been having ever increasing economic growth, and yet, when you measure people's happiness, that hasn't moved one iota. So people kind of draw the conclusion, well, all of this economic growth is just a kind of waste of time because it's not making us any happier. I just think we should be sceptical about that. I'm going to say a little bit more about that a bit later. But I don't know if you want to sort of comment on that, if anyone... Scott.
Did you say you're going to explain why later?
I'll say a little bit more about that later.
My question was just, why? Sorry.
I mean, do you think, Scott, that is the case? That, economic growth is not making any difference to our...
Well, so therefore implying that economic growth is directly, in some way, responsible for happiness, at least to some level. I accept it is to some level, although I think it's a primary driver. It increases life expectancy, but then does that increase happiness?
Yeah, okay.
I think all of the positive influences it has don't necessarily themselves, even in en masse, equal happiness or more happiness, necessarily.
Okay. Comment over there, yeah.
How far back does happiness data go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's probably not more than a few decades. So, I mean, if I measure I can't know for sure that I'm happier than my grandmother, for example.
Okay, so
but when I look at the conditions of her life, I'm pretty sure that I've got many more opportunities for happiness than my grandmother had.
So a few decades ago, we might be talking about a period of relative economic decline.
Sorry, you're saying that...
The data only goes back a few decades. We
Yeah.
might be spanning a period of economic decline, in actual fact.
Well, what for certain people? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, interesting point. Yeah.
I've got two views of that. I think it's a bit of, shall we say, selective. He always said, we were always happier in the old days. He was always happier because you don't really want to admit you weren't. So that's the idea that you were happier. But secondly, the other one is the fact that the economic growth has meant that education has got better, and by the fact that we're more educated means that we are thinking more, and ignorance is bliss.
But they're not actually asking people to say, were you happier in the old days? They're not asking that question. They're just asking people whatever question they ask. But it's basically subjective reporting about somebody's where they would put themselves, say, on a score of 1 to 10. How happy are you? And they're just plotting that over the years and decades. And they're just saying that doesn't move.
If we go back to your definition about possible minuses, as we get more economically prosperous, are there greater opportunities for more downsides of unhappiness? So your
there are as well,
you're not
sure.
actually 24/7.
Exactly.
There
are.
You earn a load more money, but you can't have any time to spend it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I accept that. We'll come back to this point a little bit later. Should we be sceptical about the idea that a 6-week happiness course will make you happy? Some of my graduates are here this evening, okay? So you can talk to them about this. I'm probably underplaying myself a bit at the moment. I led a fantastic happiness course in the autumn, and all of the people who were on that course had just ended the course fantastically happier than that. I measured their serotonin levels before and afterwards, and I can prove it scientifically. If you believe that, you believe anything. Okay. But what I'm actually saying there, seriously, and again, this is partly because Action for Happiness are launching a happiness course, and I'm not quite sure what their take is or how they're selling it. But I was very careful to not to sell my happiness course on the idea that, oh, you come on this course and it will make you happy. Come on the course, learn about happiness, take some ideas away, but it's up to you, to apply some of those ideas. Happiness is in your hands. It's not about just coming on that course and be sort of you buying happiness like a packet of cornflakes. I will be running that course again at some point. So keep your eyes peeled for the publicity. Okay, that's enough scepticism. Let's move on to Daniel Nettle again. He's written two very good books. One is called Happiness, the Science Behind Your Smile. And I have two copies of this book. Recommended retail price £8.99. I'll sell it to you for 15 quid. No. You can have a couple of quid off there if you would like to buy one of those. I'm finding that drinking beer during the talk is not a good idea. It's making me more thirsty, so I might go on to water in a minute. But I wanted to get pissed by the end of this talk. Right. Okay. So he also wrote a very good book called Personality, What Makes You the Way You Are. And we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some of his ideas there. So he comes up with a 5-factor model of personality. Those of you who've done personality tests at work, probably dread this whole thing. I'm not going to do a psychometric test on you. And you might be sceptical about personality, measuring personality. Okay, fair enough. But Daniel Nettle is saying that, there are lots of different there are lots of different models of personality, but he claims that all of them boil down to these 5 factors. So let's just accept that, because if we don't accept it, I'm just going to have to run out of here. So let's look at these 5 factors of personality. Extroversion. So these are people who are outgoing, ambitious and competitive. Now, in older texts, you will see extroversion spelt with an A, extraversion. But in more modern texts, it tends to be the O. So I'm just going to go with extroversion. That's just for any pedants in here about spelling. Neuroticism. These are people who are prone to anxiety and depression. Conscientiousness, people who are organised and self-disciplined. Agreeableness, these are people who are empathic. I always feel that should be empathetic. But anyway, let's go with empathic. Cooperative. And openness, this is people who are open to new ideas and creative. So Daniel Nettle says that all models of personality can be reduced to these 5 factors. I want to mainly talk about 2 of them, extroversion and neuroticism, and the effect that those 2 factors have on happiness. So these are quotations from Daniel Nettle. Extroverts have a lot of positive emotion in their daily lives. High extroversion scorers consistently report more states of joy, desire, enthusiasm and excitement than low scorers. Extroversion is variation in the responsiveness of positive emotions. In the high scorer, the responsiveness is great, and so the extrovert is prepared to work hard to get the buzz of company, excitement, achievement, adulation, and romance. Now, I'm going to say a little bit about people who are low scorers, because I just think this is interesting, and it introduces a new bit of vocabulary that I've only just recently discovered, so I like to find new words. People with a low score on the extroversion scale may suffer from a condition known as anhedonia. I don't know if any of you have come across that word before, but it's quite an interesting word. This is a lack of pleasure in normally pleasurable things, which is an aspect of depression. So I don't know if you've ever experienced that or know anyone who's actually suffering from anhedonia. Interesting. Okay. But let's look at the brain, because extroversion can be located in the brain. In the brain of an extrovert, the neurons, that just means brain cells, in these areas, the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, are highly reactive. And the neurons in these areas use the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is a reward chemical. Okay, so let's just have an illustration of this. So here's a rat, and if a tiny electrode is implanted in one of these regions in a rat's brain and hooked up to a lever, the rat will press the lever all the time, even to the exclusion of eating, drinking, and mating. Lucky rat. They will do it thousands and thousands of times, until they kind of die. They're dying, so they're so happy. So, why are these areas in the brain so reactive? Well, the reason is because the dopamine reward will make you do things that are good for passing on your genes, like going to parties and getting laid. Otherwise, you just might not bother. I'm only talking to the extroverts, by the way. I don't know if we've got any extroverts in tonight, but we might have. I might ask you to reveal yourself at some point. We'll see. I could have done a test on all of you to find out, but I know we've got at least one in here. Extroverts have more sexual partners than people who are low on the extroversion scale. Bastards. Okay, so here's just Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Happiness Hypothesis, quite a good book on happiness, and he's really just making the same point here. Our brains, like rat brains, are wired so that food and sex give us little bursts of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that is the brain's way of making us enjoy the activities that are good for the survival of our genes. And the people who are extroverts just get that a little bit extra dopamine with those things like food and sex and parties. So that's why we've got extroverts in our midst, because they had more sexual partners in the past, and you, if you are an extrovert, are descended from those people. Okay, make sense? In the evolutionary advantage in being an extrovert. Okay. Let's talk about neuroticism then. Or let's not. Okay. Let's have some more beer. I don't like to talk about neurotics. You can talk about extroverts. Oh, he's an extrovert. But if you say, oh, he's a neurotic, or even worse, she's a neurotic. Do you know what I mean? I don't like to just label people as neurotics. So we'll talk about neuroticism and people who have a score on that scale. So neuroticism measures the responsiveness of the negative emotion systems. Negative emotions are fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, disgust, sadness. And high scorers are more affected by the hassles of daily life than low scorers and tend to attract disasters. Why does that happen? I mean, do you agree that does happen? Yeah. Do you know people who are disaster prone? I'm getting some nods here. Why is that? It seems doubly unfair.
So, I think because they overreact, and so that escalates.
Overreact, they escalate. Somehow they're kind of, they attract disasters. That does seem unjust, doesn't it? But there does seem to be some truth in it. High scorers respond to the news of bad events in the most catastrophic way possible. This is, really at the high end. It was all my fault. Everybody hates me. I will never succeed. I bet everyone in here at some point has said, everybody hates me. Haven't you?
When I was 13.
When you were when you were 13, yeah. Many years ago, John. Okay. Right, and it's a little bit more, there's a bit more bad news coming up about neuroticism, I'm afraid. I don't want to say, if you are high in neuroticism, and that may be why you come to this talk tonight, I don't want to push you over the edge with this list. So when I put this list of disorders up, don't think, oh my God, if I'm high on neuroticism, I'm going to get all of these at once. Just take one at a time. That's enough to be going on with. Right, here goes. Depression, anxiety disorders, phobias, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD, paranoia, insomnia, headaches, chronic feelings of worthlessness and emptiness, poor immune function. It's pretty bad news, isn't it? Why should somebody who's high on neuroticism have poorer immune function? Why do they get that as well? Yeah.
How do you know which one comes first? Do they not get expressed and have anxiety disorders because of that poor immune?
Maybe.
They just don't look after themselves.
Maybe they don't look after themselves.
Is it an evolutionary glitch, or is there a reason for you to be neurotic?
Oh, erotic, did you say? Neurotic. Yeah, we'll come on to the evolutionary advantage of neuroticism in a minute. There are some advantages, otherwise they wouldn't be here.
If people are neurotic, they're not going out and they're not getting vitamin D from sunshine.
Okay, yeah, it could be they're not going out enough and getting vitamin D. It could also be things like chronic stress levels floods the body with cortisol, and that can actually have a detrimental effect on your immune system. Something like that. Okay. Now this is even worse news, but interesting. If you are high in the neuroticism score, your biological family members are more prone to depression and suicide, because personality is 50% inherited from your parents. So if you are high in the neuroticism score, then there's a high chance that your family members will have the same stuff going on. I'm kind of thinking problem families here, but maybe we won't get too much into that. But it's kind of bad news, isn't it? But there is okay, so let's look at the brain. Where is neuroticism in the brain? Does anyone know? Good, okay, I'm glad I'm a few pages ahead of you. It can be located in the brain. In high scorers, the amygdala is more active. You all know you've got an amygdala. It's a little sort of, probably about that size, like a walnut in the base of your brain. So in high scorers, the amygdala is more active and maybe larger and denser. Also, the hippocampus and the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex are less active and maybe smaller. So there's your amygdala, and this funny bow-shaped thing here is the hippocampus. I haven't got the other bit listed, but we're on there. But your prefrontal cortex is somewhere there. Okay, now just as an aside, we're talking here about the ancient limbic system, which I like to call your reptile brain, which is about 150 to 200 million years old. Now this is a complete aside, totally irrelevant to what we're talking about, but I just thought we'd throw this in, because the human brain is what you would expect to find if evolution is true. Okay? Because if Adam and Eve had been designed from scratch, you might find a completely different brain design, okay, from reptiles. at the fact that the brain, if you look at the brain, it's basically been built up over millions, hundreds of millions of years, and it's just building on what went before. That's why we've got, in the sort of deepest recesses of our brain, we've got our reptile ancestors stuck in there. And that's actually causing quite a lot of problems for us. It also helps us get out of trouble as well. Okay, so moving on. So let's talk about the brain chemicals involved in negative emotions. Adrenaline is associated with anxiety. I mean, adrenaline is obviously can be a good thing as well. Cortisol is a stress chemical. And serotonin. Now this gets a little bit more complicated. And if we have got any neuroscientists in here tonight, you can put me right. But I think this is roughly right. So if serotonin is removed too rapidly from the synapses, that's the gaps between the neurons, this is a risk factor for depression. Hence you have these drugs called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors such as Prozac. So it's basically stopping the serotonin from being removed too quickly, as I understand it. And I won't get too deeply into this, but just a little bit more information. There are two forms of the serotonin transporter gene, long and short. You get one from your mum and one from your dad. So if you've got two long forms of the gene, that's good in terms of less susceptibility to depression. If you've got two short forms of the gene, that's not so good. And if you've got one of each, that's kind of in the middle. Okay, so there's some genetic stuff going on there with depression. But let's talk about the benefits of neuroticism. Do you think there are any benefits to being neurotic?
Risk aversion.
Risk aversion, fantastic. Okay. So, people who are high on the neuroticism scale are more cautious and they were less likely to get eaten by predators in our evolutionary past. So that's why they're here today. You're less likely to take extreme risks, such as climbing Mount Everest. Leave that to the extroverts, because they're getting their dopamine hit, whatever they're doing. But they're taking extreme risks and with a high risk of dying, so they won't be passing on their extroversion genes, while you'll be merrily having fewer sexual partners if you're high on neuroticism. And you'll be passing on your genes. Now this is the best news, I think, for people who are neurotic or high on neuroticism. You're more likely to be a creative writer, a poet, an artist, or an intellectual. Some great news. So if we have any budding intellectuals in here tonight, it's good news. Okay, yeah, I mean people like Freud, obviously. Yes?
Sorry, just kidding. If the extroverts are getting more dopamine from activities, why do they go out and do things like climbing Mount Everest? Why can't they get a bit of dopamine and everything goes to the pub?
So the question was, why do the extroverts need to go to Everest? Because they're already getting more dopamine, but they're driven to do things that give them that dopamine hit. That's the point. Okay. I mean, only a few of them climb Mount Everest, not all of them. That was an extreme example. Let's find out then who the extroverts are. Hands up, who would much rather go to a party than stay at home and read a book? Hands up, who would rather go to a party? Yes! There we go. Right. This is, okay, who has done it? Fantastic. And, it depends. What does it depend on?
I think it's not that as black or white, to be honest.
What isn't black and white?
Like, if I'm an extrovert, do I always rather to go to the parties or at home drinking a really good novel? It depends.
Okay, sure, but I'm kind of generalising, you know, but your general inclination would be...
Depends on the extroverts. The further you are at the scale.
Sorry?
You are getting almost any party.
You would go to almost any party?
Chocolate party.
That's even a Tupperware party. Fantastic. Okay. Right, let's just turn this around then. Hands up. Who would, generally speaking, and okay, it might be something to do with age.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, prefer to stay at home, read a book, than go to a party. Woohoo! Okay, there are quite a few of those people in as well. Okay, I'm not saying, right, then you are not high in neuroticism, but you are a little bit lower in extroversion, okay, that's all I'm saying.
Hey, what about the people who like both parties and books?
Yeah, reading books.
That just means you're in the middle of the extroversion scale. That's all it means. Okay. Pardon?
Party in the library.
Party in the library. Okay. Now this is a really important point. Neuroticism is like an internal smoke detector. Ideally, we want it to be on the right setting to detect real risks, not imaginary ones. We all need to have a bit of neuroticism. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any anxiety about any risks at all. We've got to have a smoke detector, but it just needs to be on the right setting. So all we're saying here is that if you're high on the neuroticism scale, it's like having a smoke detector which picks up a fire that's happening on the other side of the world, or something crazy like that. So it's too sensitive, the setting is too sensitive. So with a smoke detector, presumably you can just turn down the sensitivity. I don't know, I haven't got one. But it's a bit more difficult to do that with your internal neuroticism scale. Okay, we might talk about genetic modification in a minute. Right. So can we change our personalities? Hands up, those of you who think yes, we can change our personalities. Quite a few, yeah. Or change with age, okay. Or change our behaviour. Right.
Deliberate change or might change with age.
Okay. Hands up those of you who think, no, we can't change our personalities. Okay, so...
Change your attitude, but not your personality.
Okay, fine. I agree with the people who said no, but you can learn to manage your personality better. 50% of your personality is inherited, and we know this from identical twin studies. Okay, I'm sure that precise figure has been challenged, but this is what David Warden says, and I'm kind of treating him as a bit of an authority tonight. So 50% is inherited. The other 50% is shaped by other factors such as IQ and male height at age 16. So, for example, a person with a high IQ may be less conscientious because they don't need to be. Do you know people like that? Or you may be that person yourself. If you're extremely clever, you can get away with maybe not being as conscientious. Yes?
Are you saying that factors like IQ and male height are not generated by inheritance? Surely they must be to a large extent.
Yes, they are, but they also have an impact on your personality.
Yes, but...
Well, that's just one example. Do you want to see the male height at 16 example?
Yeah.
Larger men are slightly less agreeable because they can get away with it. But this only works if you are taller than your peers, around about sort of mid-teens. So there's no point me measuring people here tonight. We need to know if at age 16 you are both male and also a bit tall for your age. Hands up anyone who falls into that category. Okay, so we've got a few people who fall into that category. So I'm going to ask Andy. Andy, were you? Do you think this affected your personality, and did you get away with being a bit less agreeable than your
He's a
peers?
contrarian, yeah. So and he was tall at 16, so yes.
Yeah. I probably got away with a few more things. Other than that.
Well, like punching people who were
acting. Yeah. Things I regret doing now.
You regret doing
now he's not quite as tall compared to
you mentioned short man, small man syndrome. Yeah, I guess that can have an effect on your personality as well. One thing I used to think was that birth order had an effect on your personality. Who thinks that birth order has an effect on your personality? Quite a few people. Daniel Nettle, who is my authority tonight, says that's absolute rubbish. There's no scientific evidence for this at all, which is a shame because I kind of made excuses for myself, being the youngest, sibling, and the fact that my sister, my older sister, became a head teacher, and I didn't do anything as fantastic as that. Mind you, I am head of Dorset Humans. I got there in the end. It was only because nobody else wanted to do it. I'm still stuck there 7 years later. Okay, let's move on. So, are people with a high extroversion score happier? Hands up those of you who think that they are. Okay. Hands up those of you who think, well no, it doesn't really make any difference. Well, I'm sorry. People who with a high extroversion score generally are happier. Bastards. Generally, yes, but this does depend on the outlets for their extroversion. You know what I'm saying? If they can't get to that party, or they can't, for whatever reason, do the things that give them that dopamine hit, then they're not going to be so happy. But generally, yes, because they get more of those more extreme dopamine hits. They probably don't need to attend talks on happiness. So you're just here for curiosity. Is Barney really leaving? Okay, so those of you who are extrovert, thank you for coming tonight. I'm very pleased to see you. Are people with a high neuroticism score doomed to unhappiness? What do you think? Hands up those of you who think yes, doomed. Okay. Well, let's not be too unkind. It depends on the score, obviously. What I would say is that people who with a high neuroticism score are more likely to need happiness techniques, which are coming up soon, and skills, and possibly counselling, and possibly even medication, depending on how high this is. Okay, so if you think that you have a high neuroticism score, and if you don't know, but you're kind of seem more prone to worrying about things than your colleagues or your family members. No, they're all worrying as well because they're all biologically insane. Then, or if you want to do a personality test online, I'm sure you could find out, scientifically whether this is true of you. It's really just Dianetics. I can feel another skeptical talk coming. It's good to know this because you can just say, oh, okay, maybe I do need some more help with, my happiness or, soothing my neuroticism. So we'll say a little bit about it, but I think it's good to know that. Right, let's just have a brief recap on the 5-factor model of personality. I'm just keeping an eye on the time because we will have a break at a certain point. Extroversion, so there is a positive correlation with happiness. Neuroticism, there's a negative correlation with happiness. Conscientiousness has a positive correlation with happiness because if you're conscientious, you're more likely to achieve things, and achieving things can contribute to your happiness level. Agreeableness has a positive correlation with happiness because you're more likely to get on with other people. If you are low in agreeableness, then how does this play out? Low on agreeableness, I suppose that you don't kind of care what other people think. Yeah.
People avoid you.
I mean, there's this kind of this idea that, you know, people who really don't care, and they just get what they want in life, and they don't mind trampling over other people. We kind of want to, I don't know, we want to see some kind of cosmic justice for people like that, don't we? Psychopaths, you know, we want there to be some kind of justice. Well, maybe there is a little bit of justice here, because what we're saying here is that people with low agreeableness are probably not going to be getting on well with other people. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure. Yeah. The thing is, we'll talk, when we talk about happiness skills, we're going to be saying that one of the key ways of increasing your happiness is getting on with other people. I'll say more about that later. So I'm just rambling on here about agreeableness, and I think I'll just move on to openness. And I don't know if there is a correlation with openness. This is about creativity, openness to ideas, whether there's a correlation with happiness with that particular personality factor. I don't know. Maybe there is. Okay. If these factors are plotted on a 10-point scale, there are roughly 100,000 personality profiles. 10 to the power 5, I hope you'll agree with maths. So that probably means that about 200 other people in Britain just like you. You've just got to find them. Or avoid them. Okay, so why have I put that book up there now? Has anyone read Brave New World?
Yes.
Why have I put that up on the screen?
Sometimes they're trying to live to be immortal, to be very old, and then they find they regret being monkey.
That's not quite what I had in mind. There's a happiness drug called Soma. That Huxley, because Huxley, I think he was on mescaline or something when he was writing these books. And so in Brave New World, all of the, I think it's the epsilons, the workers, they take this drug called Soma, so they're happy. They're like the pig of happiness, and they're so happy even though they're slaves in droves because they take this drug. So here's a question for you. If you could take a daily happiness pill with no addictive side effects, would you take it? Hands up those of you who would.
I wouldn't mind if it had addictive side effects, I don't think.
You wouldn't even mind the addictive side effects? Right,
Take one happy, take it every day.
Okay, hands up those of you who take the pill. Okay, quite a few of you. Give it a try. Worth a try. Okay. Hands up those of you who would not take the pill. You miserable lot. Okay, well, I mean, there is a daily happiness pill, isn't there? That has got some addictive side effects. It's called Prozac, isn't it? So, we already have that drug. I mean, people do take it because some people need it. I think the key thing here is that we can't take a pill that just switches off our smoke detector. Okay, if we go back to this idea of neuroticism, we need a bit of neuroticism to stop us doing really silly things, really risky things. So it would be crazy to take a pill that just that actually switches off the smoke detector entirely. So I think we'd have to talk a bit more about what sort of pill this might be. How about genetic modification of future humans to be less neurotic? Does that sound like a good idea?
No.
Hands up those of you who think it's a good idea, some genetic modification in the future to tone that down a bit with certain individuals.
What, mandatory?
Yeah, as long as they don't enter the food chain, that'll be fine.
As long as they don't enter the food chain. I'm not getting many votes for this. Yes?
Do we need them to be solicitors or something?
Well, yeah, maybe we do, but we've probably got enough people doing that anyway. Yes.
There was research into avoiding serious mental illnesses, for example, genetic research into that field. So we do therapy and other aspects.
Okay, so
other
something.
diseases, if you like, if you're talking about genetic modification.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm saying it's happening.
No, it's happening, yeah, okay. How about a rat lever to deliver your dopamine rewards?
Yes.
A bit of a cheer for that one. Yeah, and it's very keen on that one. Yes.
How would increase compulsive activity, which is not necessarily good?
No, it would. You would just be pressing that lever all the time, but maybe you'd have some kind of control on it, but you could only press it once every 10 minutes or something. Okay, who's read this book, Sapiens? It's on the bestseller list, and I've already had 2 people give it to me as a Christmas present, so I had to try and read it. Sorry, it's a bit smaller. Yuval Noah Harari. Okay, he had quite some interesting observations about this subject. So this is a bit of a long quotation, but I think we'll put it up and we'll just read it and we'll see what we think of it. He says, the only thing that can make us truly happy is manipulating our biochemistry. If we invest billions in understanding our brain chemistry and developing appropriate treatments, we can make people far happier than ever before. Lasting happiness only comes from serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. It makes no difference that a penthouse is more comfortable than a mud hut. The only thing that matters is the current level of serotonin. So there are 2 points there. The first point is the only thing that really matters is the biochemistry. And the second point is coming back to this idea of material progress and whether somebody uses this analogy of a banker in a penthouse is not going to be any happier than his ancestor who was in a mud hut. So let's take the first point first. Do you agree with the point that he's making, that the only thing that makes us truly happy is manipulating our biochemistry?
Yeah.
Yes, what would you like to say?
Well, I would agree. I mean, many people are like they are possibly because they are their strings, if you like, are being pulled by the hormones. And recently I noticed in the newspaper they were saying that your happiness depends on how happy your gut bacteria are. And only if you balance those can you have a basis for balancing your own personality.
Okay.
Not so responsible by somebody saying the opposite.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm sure about that. Yeah. Yes.
Well, does happiness exist without unhappiness? Can you be unless you've been unhappy? If you think you're in a state of permanent happiness, is it almost like a state of permanent numbness?
Well, this is quite an interesting philosophical question, isn't it? You know, can we have a concept of good without evil? Can we have a concept of happiness without unhappiness? I suspect we can. I think we could have happiness without unhappiness.
How do you know that?
Because you just have those positive feelings, you know.
Yes, but if you have positive feelings, not knowing what is not so comfortable feelings, how will you measure them?
You just feel great.
But how can you measure how great you are if you don't feel what is not so great?
I probably wouldn't bother to measure it. That's what I'm saying. I'm just feeling that. Aaron.
Could you imagine somebody that's permanently happy being told by their boss or at a funeral? Well, thank you very much. That's great that you sat me. Great.
Yeah, right, okay. So you're making a point here that this manipulating your biochemistry is just mucking up the human condition and...
Well, there will be people that take drugs, heroin, whatever, so they will be, I guess, permanently happy, but they're no use to society because they wouldn't be driving for anything.
Okay. I'm not getting too much support for his first idea. Yes?
But aren't they just byproducts of living your life?
Yes.
You experience something, so you're happy. You experience something, so you're sad. You have a nice poo, you're really happy.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, happiness and unhappiness are byproducts. But it's also, I hope that from what I've said so far is that it does depend on your personality and your brain structure and biochemistry to the extent that you know, what byproducts you actually get from those activities, like having people having. Yes, Chris.
I guess you can measure quite easily levels of serotonin, oxytocin, and then see if the correlation between those levels and the extent to which people are happy. And so
yes.
You can possibly undermine that argument based on that evidence.
Sorry, you can undermine what argument?
Well, his argument is that it's only a matter of brain chemistry, making sure you've got the right levels of those brain chemicals. But he needs to back that statement up with some evidence.
Okay. Yeah, Aaron.
In America, I believe you can buy dopamine tablets or it's administered by doctors. It's not illegal here for some reason. So it doesn't work over there. Like injecting very good that you think you're short of in a medical way, it doesn't fix the problem. So it must vary to person to person.
Yeah, I mean that just makes me think of my dad had Parkinson's disease for 40 years and he had to take dopamine tablets just to try and control the symptoms. I don't know that it made him happy, but I mean, he had to be on antidepressants as well, possibly because there's a lack of dopamine in the brain. So, yeah, it's complicated. Okay, I'm just seeing where we can have a break. Probably soon. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you my seven secrets of happiness, which you will come back for, won't you? Let's just discuss this once more time then, the idea that it makes no difference to someone, living in a penthouse, which is much more comfortable than a mud hut. I mean, do you think he's right to say this, that actually it doesn't make any difference?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Do you?
Yeah, say a chap was walking across the desert and his body was tired, he got to his mud hut, he could relax. The exact same chemicals would be released in his brain if it was a chap arriving in his penthouse. That's what he's actually saying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
because obviously, depending on what type of personality he was.
Sure,
if he's neurotic, no, he's never going to be happy.
If they've both got the same personality profile, yeah, okay, good point. Yes, lady there.
It doesn't pick up on the role inequalities play. So if you've got a mud hut and I've got a penthouse, but there's going to be, because of the inherent inequality there's going to be some unhappiness. So maybe it doesn't matter if it's a penthouse or a mud hut, as long as we've got the same.
Yeah, but he's not talking about people in the same time in history. He's talking about generations apart, these two people.
Okay, so not people at the same time?
No. So that's a, yeah. So that
it could be, I mean, sort of like, like where you have people who live in mud huts and then you have
Yeah.
dictators who live in that.
That would be an interesting comparison as well.
Yeah.
We'll say a little bit about that as well.
But you're suggesting it's a relative. Happiness. Well, you're suggesting that happiness is actually a relative thing. So if everyone around you lives in a mud hut, you might be happier than some of them. However, if you then got introduced into society where you're the only one in a mud hut and everyone lives in a penthouse, you may actually, because of the envy that and competitiveness the extrovert has.
Sure, yeah. That's another aspect of it. Yeah. Yes.
What might come with the mud hut though is poor sanitation and disease and death and losing of children and
Thank you.
all this
Yeah.
absolute misery that we don't have anymore.
That was exactly the point I was going to make, and I'm glad you made it for me, because I think there can be all sorts of other things going on with the person in the mud hut, like preventable disease, toothache, all sorts of things that the person living now can sort out because of our material progress. So I think this argument is bollocks, actually. Sorry. I'm sorry about tonight, but I disagree with him. Yes.
I agree with what you just said, but I don't think that's the argument he's making. He's making kind of an odd argument, I think, because he's making the point that happiness equals the level of serotonin.
Yeah.
He's saying if there's a person in the mud hut and a person in the penthouse, and they're both at the same level of serotonin, then they'll both be pretty happy.
Okay.
So the guy who lives in the mud hut is happy.
Whereas the argument, the counter argument I'm kind of making is that the person in the penthouse has got more opportunities to have a better serotonin level than the person in the mud hut. It's got all sorts of problems that the richer person doesn't have now.
But isn't it the case that the highly suicidal is of the super rich, or is that in it? The other thing I've noticed is travelling around parts of the world where people in general are very poor, and you do get a feeling that people are happy. When I come back here to England, Christ, my neighbourhood is miserable.
Yeah, okay. So you suggested that the super rich have a higher level of suicide. I don't know. That sounds very surprising. But yeah, so you're also saying that travelling in developing countries, people seem incredibly happy. You come back to England and everyone's stressed and miserable and all the rest of it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a couple of points at the back and then we'll have a break. Yeah.
So by his own argument, it's only the brain chemistry that matters. So the reality of their condition is kind of irrelevant. It's their experience that is the relevant factor. And because technology outpaces evolution, the brain chemistry behind that process hasn't changed all that much. So the person living in the penthouse creates the concerns and the stresses that the brain tells him exist over emails and watches and things.
It's the person living in the mud hut is reasonably comfortable in that mud hut. When you ask them, where are you on a level of 0 to 10? You'd probably say, oh yeah, probably around about 6 or 7. And the guy in the mud hut, the guy in the penthouse would probably say the same thing. So, but I think there are other factors. Yeah.
There was a recent study, I don't know how recent it was, done over 75 years looking at people and their levels of happiness to try and define the common factor that makes for a happy person. And it was actually not to do with success or riches or anything, but connections and how connected they were to other people. And I don't know if that would be actually related to hormone levels. Aren't hormone levels more to do with that burst of activity than a state of being? So maybe different sorts of happiness.
Okay, we'll talk about connectedness after the break. So thank you very much for that lead into after the break. Simon, do you want to? I've got some fantastic stuff in the second half. So please come back. You've been great so far. How long is the break? Right, we're going to talk a little bit about other factors which affect your happiness, and then we'll talk about what I'm calling 7 happiness practices So we'll try and get through the presentation by about 9:30, but again, we're happy to sort of take comments and questions as we go, and then maybe there might be a little bit of time at the end for any further questions. Okay, and you can challenge any of these points as they go up. So this one is about marriage. Married people are happier, or happier people are more likely to get married and stay married. But whatever it is, the effect wears off over time. So which do you think it is? Do you think that married people are happier just because marriage makes people happier? Or are happy people more likely to get married and stay married? Both. I guess it probably is both, isn't it?
I'm sure I heard somewhere that the happiest people are married men and single women. Not necessarily together.
I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Yes. People believe that marriage will make them happier, and with time they realise it's not the marriage.
Okay. Yeah, well, the positive psychologists and people who study this, I don't think they really know which way round it is. It could be either or it could be both, as you say. But whatever it is, it wears off over time. I'm not quite sure how long it takes to wear off. I've been with my partner, actually now my husband, for 30 years. So has it worn off over time? He's not here tonight, but I'm not going to tell you anybody. No, actually, it gets better. It gets better. It varies. Right. People with children are less happy, especially if their children are under 5 or if they have teenagers. Does that resonate with anyone here tonight?
Yes. Who's going to admit to that?
Pardon?
Who's going to admit to that? Basically saying, I hate my kids.
But we mustn't let this get out really to the wide world, otherwise people would just stop having children, wouldn't they? Would cause all sorts of problems. Right, well, this is not really much of a surprise. People in lower socio-economic classes are more prone to insecurity, worry, have less autonomy, and are somewhat less happy.
Jeremy Kyle.
Jeremy Kyle, okay. Does anyone want to challenge this, or is this just common sense? So those rich bastards again, who are in those high class and they can go to private school, they are also happier. Lynn?
One survey that was done was about the happiness differences in different societies. And what they found was the happier societies were those where the difference between the richest and the poorest was huge. So you could have a very poor country, but as long as the difference between the richest poor and the poorest poor wasn't too great, then they were fine with them. Of course, the biggest unhappiness is in those.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the how this works. I mean, there does seem to be a correlation between inequality and unhappiness. And I don't think it's just about people at the bottom of the pile seeing people in private jets and feeling unhappy about that comparison, because I don't think we generally compare ourselves with super rich people. Maybe you do, right? But I think generally we're comparing ourselves with people who are kind of colleagues and doing slightly better than us. That might make you feel a little bit unhappy. Barney.
The quote doesn't say that the rich bastards are happy, it just says that people at the bottom of the pile are less happy. So I suspect that perhaps the happiest people are the people in the middle, and wonder if actually one of the secrets to true happiness is to be average in all aspects of life.
Well, that's a nice thought, Barney, but it's not what these statistics bear out. Although I can't quote all the research that's been done, but going back to my authority, Daniel Nettle, and the books I've read, there does seem to be, and it's not a huge difference, but there does seem to be a slight increase in happiness levels the higher you go on the scale. So if you're pretty much at the top of the scale, you're a little bit happier than the people. It's a bit like that sketch, isn't it? You know, is it the Monty Python sketch? You know, I'm better than
TW3. There is a suggestion in a report that says there's £70,000 in it to say money doesn't buy you happiness. So once you get up to 70,000, as long as you can attain freedom, after that it doesn't make you happy until you get super rich.
Yeah, I think that's isolating income, which we'll talk about, and I think you're right. Okay, people aged 45 to 59 are less happy. If you read, this was reported recently. I saw it in the Guardian, maybe in all the big newspapers. Again, it's only a slight difference. You know, it doesn't mean that if you're in that age bracket, you're doomed to unhappiness. But why would people in that age bracket be less happy? Because they've got teenagers?
I think it's about the pressures and expectations about that kind of age. People must, or the society says, people must have kids by now, successful in their job, lots of things. And when a person doesn't fulfill that, or does not fulfill the dreams they have, in that couple of years, probably they feel less happy. I don't know.
Okay.
I think about you're concerned about your family. You're at those stages, you're looking after your parents and kids at the same time.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the things they were saying, wasn't it? You've got kids and you've got probably aged parents as well, and the pressures are just kind of enormous. Okay, but everything's fine by the time you get to age 65 to 79, a bit happier, kind of the golden years of retirement if you're fortunate. After 79, it tends to tail off a little bit because obvious reasons, sorts of things are keeping you at that point. Okay, women are both happier and less happy than men. What's going on? Why? Is it because they have more volatile emotions? Can't make the mind up.
Or just the surveys are inconsistent.
Or surveys are inconsistent. Well, I don't know. I'll just leave that with you. I think there is evidence that women have higher highs and lower lows, something like that. And men just kind of go along like that. People in rich democratic countries are happier than people in poor, chaotic countries or non-democratic countries.
Yeah, is America the happiest country on the planet? That's a massive number of people in America who have all sorts of issues.
America really is. I think we have to put America in the developing country category. Well, it's kind of both, isn't it?
The exceptions to the point almost.
I think the American election is getting really interesting, don't you? It's, you don't hear the North Koreans complaining. Long-standing illness and disability can impair your happiness. Well, it's not really a surprise, but I say impair. It doesn't mean that you're doomed to being unhappy, because we'll talk a little bit in a minute about something called adaptation, which means that whatever happens to you, people tend to come back to this kind of middle level. Unemployment is a high risk factor for unhappiness. Okay. Does having more money make you happier?
No.
Up to a point.
Makes you happy for a time.
Or makes you happy for a time? Right, okay. Well, the answer to this is yes if you're poor. So if you're poor and you have if you have a pay rise, then it's going to have a positive effect on your happiness. If you're already comfortably well off, you mentioned £70,000 a year, or whatever you think the income level is, then additional increments of wealth don't make much difference. So if you're earning whatever level you want, your sort of optimum level is £70,000, let's say, you're not going to be much happier if you've got 70 billion, rather than 70,000 pounds. The key problem is social comparison and what's called a hedonic treadmill. So we have this little chap here on a treadmill. So the idea that you can be, you will be happier if only you get the next pay rise or the next material possession. Those things will make you happy for a little while, John, is what you're saying. But then you adapt to it. And then the person next door gets a better car or another pay rise, and so then you're on this treadmill. And that's probably the wrong way to think about happiness. It doesn't mean that material things are wrong. It doesn't mean that aspiring to a good income is wrong. It just means that this idea of being on a treadmill, a belief perhaps that you'll be happy if only you get this and if only you get that, because that's just a game that will never end. So the message here is that we should focus on the intrinsic value of things rather than their positional utility. So in other words, if you think that a Rolls Royce is just a fantastic piece of engineering and you just love having that Rolls Royce for its intrinsic, the happiness that it gives you, and it's nothing to do with comparing, you've got a better car than your next door neighbour, then that's fine, go ahead and have your Rolls Royce. That's what the Rajneesh said, didn't he? I think he ended up with 70 Rolls Royces. The guy who led that orange cult in Oregon. Anyway, okay. Let's move on. What's going on here? What do you think has happened to this person at the top here? Okay, yeah, lottery winner. So we're talking here about adaptation, and human beings tend to recover from lottery wins and catastrophic accidents over time. So in other words, we tend to revert near to a default or set point for happiness over time, no matter what the circumstances. So if you think that winning the lottery is going to make you ecstatically happy forever, you're probably mistaken. It will make you happy for a while. And if you're poor, then it'd be great to have that money. But it doesn't necessarily. Your happiness level will tend to come back to near your kind of default point for happiness over time. And the same with catastrophic accidents. If any of you read my latest Chairman's View in Dorset Humanist Bulletin, I hope those of you who've received it have read it, I mentioned a friend of mine who last summer had a car accident, and the person in the back was not wearing a seatbelt, and they crashed into a car, and this person in the back slammed into the passenger seat, broke her neck, and she may not walk ever again. So she's now in Salisbury Hospital spinal unit. And, obviously when I heard about this I was very, very concerned. And she said to me, well, there's a lot more to life than walking. And she, when we went to see her, she just seemed really happy. Obviously, there are difficulties, in getting used to life in a wheelchair. But the point I'm making here is that people tend to come back to this. We adapt, and that's great news actually, that we do adapt to circumstances to a large degree, not totally perhaps. Okay, let's see if we've got time to talk about my 7 happiness practices. My little pig has come back there. The pig of happiness has appeared. Because you've got so many things to be happy about. So the first one I'm going to put up here, you've probably heard about, is gratitude. So get into the habit of expressing gratitude to others, and for all the good things in your life. The reason this works is because it stimulates positive emotions and it helps soothe your limbic system. That's your old reptile brain that plays havoc with our negative emotions. And it increases dopamine and serotonin levels in your brain and strengthens positive neural pathways. So you can actually, by practicing gratitude, you can actually change in a positive way your brain structure. Amazing but true. So you can do this in a variety of ways. You can just do it as a quick mental exercise. Your mum or your grandmother probably used to say, count your blessings. That was actually great advice. If you're in the habit of writing in a journal, you can just record what you're grateful for that day. If you don't keep a journal, one of the things that happiness scientists suggest is that you do keep a journal. You can call it a happiness journal if you like, and record the positive things that are happening in your life, because it's better not to forget them, it's better to keep them in your mind. You can do it as a life review. One of the things that I suggest people do on the happiness forms, and it's not my idea, it's an idea I picked up from one of the books, is to list 100 things that you are really grateful for, looking back over the entirety of your life. And it's not just things like music, or friendship, because you'll very quickly run out of things. But it's specific things, things that you're really grateful for, and be really specific about it. Like your first kiss, or whatever turns you on, or whatever turned you on at the time. Or a particular piece of music, be really specific, write it down. And it won't take you very long to get 100 things on that list, and it becomes a kind of treasure trove of great memories, things that you're grateful for. So it's just a suggestion, I just throw it out, something you might like to try, see if it makes you feel happier about things. That last one is something that was suggested by, I think it's suggested by Martin Seligman, this positive psychologist. He gets his students to write a letter of gratitude to somebody that you're grateful for something that they may have done maybe years ago. In fact, you can even, I know this says it in the card, you can even write a letter to someone who's died. Express that gratitude that you have for something that person did for you, and send it and see what happens. See if it makes you feel happier. See what effect it has on that person as well. So you might want to try that if you think there's someone in your life you haven't said really thank you to for something they did. Okay, that's gratitude, so try that one. This is very, very simple exercise. Identify what makes you happy and do more of it. Identify what makes you unhappy and do less of it. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes to turn to the person next to you, and you can do both of those or just pick one of them. Identify something that makes you happy. Can you do more of it? How can you do more of it? Something that makes you unhappy. Could you do less of it? I'll ring the bell when time is up. Do it really quickly. Okay, do we have any interesting ones? Any that are clean enough to share? Yes. Right. So you've already found the optimum level of that particular activity. Okay. Yeah.
There's also the argument that maybe work makes you unhappy, but you can't stop going to work if you don't something.
Yeah, but some people do make the decision, don't they? If they can go part-time and earn less money. Yeah.
Doing housework.
Does that make you happy or unhappy?
Unhappy.
Unhappy?
I already do less of it.
How many people here find that housework actually makes them happy? Actually, that housework is very, very satisfying and makes me feel happy. I'll just share one thing that makes me happy: playing the piano, and I'm doing more of that at the moment, and that does make me. It's very, very pleasurable, even though I'm not that good at it. But I've got a nice piano. Okay, well that's just it's just a simple exercise that you can do from time to time. It's kind of totally blindingly obvious, isn't it? But sometimes we just have to stop and think, what is making me unhappy? Can I do less of that? What makes me happy? Can I do more of it? See, these are simple ideas. Okay, I've got a little bit of a Buddhism coming in here. You know what's coming up, don't you? The M word. I know that some people go, oh no, mindfulness, but it is. I know what you were thinking of. The thing that makes me happy, do more of it. Yeah. So this is a particular type of mindfulness, which, to be honest, I think you would probably have to learn how to do it. I mean, some of you may already have been on meditation courses, you may have got CDs and books about it, so you may know about this. It's an interesting idea. I'm not an expert practitioner of it, but this is the idea of observing your own thoughts and feelings as they occur and pass away without getting too caught up in them and without judgment of self or others. So if you meditate, you kind of start with breathing, and it's just kind of observing your breathing. And then you can sort of graduate onto just observing your feelings as they come and go, so negative feelings. So rather than just being a victim of these negative emotions, what this is doing is actually giving you a practice of somehow detaching yourself from what's going on in your body. It's still happening in your body, but you're kind of putting a distance between your consciousness and what's happening in your body, and this can help to soothe you. As I say, I'm not an expert on this. It's something I do want to explore in a bit more depth, but I think it's an interesting idea. One of the things I have done over the years is to think of emotional reactions in my body as chemical events. So, for example, if I suddenly feel stressed at work, just by thinking, okay, cortisol has just flooded my body for some reason, and I just kind of think, what was the trigger for that? And then knowing that, unless there is a kind of chronic stress situation, knowing that generally speaking that cortisol will just kind of dissipate, is just helpful to know that. So I think the more knowledge you have about what's going on in your body, you think of these things as, think of negative events as chemical events in your body, so negative emotions as chemical events in your body. I think this can help to give you a little bit more control over your reactions to them. I don't know if you find that helpful, but it may be something that you might find interesting to explore. So it works by soothing the reactions and reducing the arousal of the limbic system. This is what a lot of this is about, is reducing the arousal of that reptile brain that's causing so much trouble. And this is just a very simple, nice idea. Look after yourself until those negative emotions subside. So really important if you're going through hard times, anxiety, depression, look after yourself. There are loads of ways in which you can do that. It might be talking to friends, it might be going for a walk, it might be any of those simple things. Look after yourself until those things subside. Okay, that was that one. A little bit more about mindfulness number 4. This is practice paying attention to enjoyable sensory experiences. Right, I need to just hurry up a little bit here. Visual, auditory, gustatory, olfactory, cutaneous, kinesthetic, and organic. Okay, I'll just quickly go through those. So visual, we're talking here about enjoyable sensory experiences. We're probably talking about nature, aren't we? You know, trees, sky, colour, beauty, harmony, all of the things that are in your visual field. Being in this room, maybe not the most beautiful experience visually, but even so, the fact that all of you, probably, can see in colour and in 3D is kind of a marvel of the human brain. And just to be aware of that is a form of mindfulness and enjoyable sensory experience. Auditory. My favourite example is birdsong. I don't know if that's something to do with my age, but the older I get, the more I really, really love the sound of birdsong. And I heard the birds today, it just sounds fantastic. But there might be other things. It might be, particular pieces of music. Gustatory, what's that? Taste, yeah, okay. On the happiness course, we do a chocolate meditation. Dark chocolate, 70%. So if you want to know what that's like, book up for my next happiness course. What's olfactory? Smell, okay. What about when you open a pack of freshly ground coffee and smell the coffee? I'm sure you can think of other olfactory. Bacon, okay. Cutaneous, what's that? Yeah, touch, skin, massage, all of that kind of stuff. Kinesthetic, what does that mean? Yeah, it's kind of, I've got in mind here sort of physical activity, walking, running, sport, that kind of thing. I'm not quite sure about organic. This is something to do with organs, and I can think of one particular organ, but I'm not quite sure what else that means. Anyway, so the idea here is paying attention to enjoyable sensory experiences. Just simple things like having a shower. When you actually you pay more attention to that experience, how fantastic that is, having a shower, or even lying in bed, just enjoying relaxation. We could say more about that, but time's running out. I just want to introduce you briefly to one of my favourite philosophers. He's a philosopher of religion called Don Cooper. He was an Anglican priest. He became an atheist. He's really one of the reasons why I became an atheist as a theology student. But he's written a book on happiness, which is I find very, very good, and he writes a lot about happiness. And I'm just going to share a few words of his and see if you like what you hear. So let's just see what he's got to say. So he writes about simple animal pleasure in life, in being alive, pleasure in our continually changing sense experience. I've often tried to emphasise the need to educate the senses, especially those of sight and hearing, to enrich people's pleasure in life, an exhilarated, selfless enjoyment of, delight in and gratitude for just the flow of daily experience, the movement of life itself, and the endless self-renewing variety of the human world. Okay, well that's a lot there, but I think that's rather a lovely passage. And this kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. I think we can train ourselves to experience more bliss in life, but it does require some learning and some educating of your senses. So I'll just leave that idea with you as a possibility. Where are we? Number 5. I need to get through these fairly quickly now. So work, whether paid or unpaid, should ideally be enjoyable and give you a sense of achievement, connection, purpose and flow. Flow is that idea of being completely absorbed in something. We had somebody on the happiness course who got a sense of flow from spreadsheets. How amazing is that? Normally it's things like rock climbing and ballroom dancing, but it could be anything. So if you don't get this from work, you might want to think about, is there a possibility of changing the work you do so that it meets more of these conditions, possibly. Achieving a challenging goal can give lasting pleasure. Mastery of something makes you feel good. Too much passive entertainment, such as watching television, is mildly depressive. Nothing wrong with watching television, but please don't waste your entire life watching hours and hours of television every day. It's not conducive to happiness. But you don't have to be striving for goals all the time, you know. Some of the time. Number 6, connecting with people. Okay, so we mentioned this a little bit as we've gone through the evening. Doesn't necessarily mean being more sociable, and especially for the people who are not high on the extroversion scale. Nurture important relationships, including with yourself. So I think hopefully you know what the important relationships are. Try not to neglect them. Get to the end of your life and say, oh yeah, I've had loads of friends, but actually I lost touch with all of them years ago. I never saw them because I was too busy. Sense of belonging is important. So if you haven't joined yet, please join Dorset Humanists. Obviously the same sense of belonging as people get from church. You know that some people, well, what I mean by that is that people say, people who are, join churches get a sense of happiness from that belonging. That's all I'm saying. A similar kind of idea. Resolve to be kind and compassionate to others and to yourself. Brief encounters with shop assistants. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think some particularly petrol station assistants they seem to be on some training course. They're really making that connection with everyone who comes in to buy petrol. I think it's fantastic. So they're making their job, which could be incredibly monotonous, they're making it a happiness practice, which I think is great. So try to talk more to shop assistants, people in lifts, wherever you have the opportunity to connect with people. And hugs, as you know, releases oxytocin, which is another sort of pleasure chemical. But my last boss could not bear being touched or hugged, so just be a little bit careful when you go to give someone a bear hug. You might want to just ask them if they're okay about it. Number 7, really simple, obvious stuff, but sometimes we forget it. Look after the basics. So exercise releases endorphins. This is endogenous morphine, which is another happiness chemical. Nutrition. I don't know what the scientific basis for this is, but it may help support the serotonin system if you eat your greens. It may help. Sleep. Now, I know some people think that word detox is absolute mumbo jumbo, but apparently sleep does literally detox the brain. So it's really important that you find out about sleep. Make sure that you get, somebody's yawning already. Try and improve the quality of your sleep, because if you don't get good sleep, then it's going to impair your happiness and all sorts of other things. There's a good book on sleep by Richard Wiseman. You may want to look at that. If you need help to deal with difficult circumstances and emotions, don't be embarrassed to ask for it. I've just embarked on a 1 day a week course in counselling skills. So I'm hoping in the future that we can run the happiness course and also offer counselling or help within Dorset Youth or something like that. Sounds like a good idea. But for some people, just going on a course is not enough. They need that additional support. The last word is from Gary Cox. Now, Gary Cox has written a book called How to Be an Existentialist. He's coming to talk to, he is an academic at somewhere in the West Country. He's coming to talk to Dorset Youth, not on existentialism, but on agnosticism in May. So if you're interested in that, come along. So he's got some interesting things to say about this. We're nearly there, people. I'll let you go soon. He's saying it's alien to the human condition for a person to be completely satisfied and contented for any length of time. If people genuinely accept this truth of the human condition and take it to heart, they will cease to hanker after complete fulfilment or total happiness, or at least be far less disappointed and far more calm and philosophical about life. So he's saying there's always going to be that gap between where you are now and where you would like to be, and that's fine, because that's what drives us on to do things as human beings. And one of the ways I put this very simply is not to, don't be unhappy about feeling unhappy. Unhappiness is part of the package, and it's okay. But what we're trying to do is not let it ruin our lives or have too much negative emotion. Okay, a couple of book suggestions. Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. If you want to wallow in misery, that's a great little cartoon book which you might enjoy. It only takes about half an hour to read it. And if you want to buy Daniel Nettles' book on happiness, The Science Behind Your Smile, I've got a couple of copies there. That's good. And any books by Professor Sonia Lyubomirsky. She's an academic in the United States. Again, she's written some very, very good books on happiness. So that's it. If you want to know more, look out for our next happiness course. And thank you very much. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Tell you about next month's event. So next month we will be welcoming David Warden doing his talk, Lies, Damn Lies and Statistics, How We Get Science Coverage From. I don't know if anyone saw the recent study he published analysing the probability of certain conspiracy theories being true, debunking them, I guess, with maths, which is quite exciting. So that'll be here Wednesday the 9th of March. So yes, that'll be right here. Please, I say gratitude makes you happier, so if you want to show your gratitude, please give us money and I'm sure you'll be a lot happier as a result. Yes, and thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.